If you are new, I am a horror writer. You can listen to a few of my horror stories linked down below. And I'm also just a girl who loves horror. So today I thought I would bring you my 20 best horror movies on Hulu, recommendations, movies that I love type deal. So let's get into it. First I'm going to give you my top 5, then I'm going to give you recommendations, and then I'm going to give you classics to watch. So let's start with my top 5 and I'll be going backwards, so I'm saving my favorite horror movie recommendation for last. The first movie that I want to recommend is The Lodge. Now I did do an entire video on this film when I watched it a few months back, so if you want a deeper analysis into that film you can go ahead and check that video out. But I really like this movie. I know that a lot of people didn't, so I know it's not a movie for everybody, but I had to be on my top 5 because I really did enjoy it. It has a lot of those internal horror features that are going on in our horror movies made in this generation, in this decade. Where, you know, the monster isn't outside trying to get in, now the monster is in your house, that family type horror. So it's about a woman who's trying to bond with her stepchildren, and they go up to a cabin, the father has to leave, they get snowed in. She has a dark past of being brought up in a cult, and so it seems like a lot of those dark memories are kind of coming to fruition. It's definitely a psychological thriller, but I just think it's fun. It's a movie that you can really analyze. There's a lot of metaphor in it, and I just really enjoyed it. So definitely not everybody's gonna like that, I'm aware, but I really did enjoy it, so I had to just put it on the list. Number 4, I'm going to say Scream 4. So I really enjoy the Scream series. I love all of the films, and I really liked Scream 4 as well. This is the only one that is on Hulu. That's why it's on the list. But we get to see more of Sydney's personal life. We get to meet her mother's sister and also her cousin. And so that's kind of an interesting twist on the series. We've only ever met her dad before and snippets of her mom, usually coming back from the dead in a dream. I really do enjoy this movie. I don't think I have to really give you a synopsis. It's a Scream movie. Same things happen in every movie, but they're still so fun. So that is my number 4 recommendation. For number 3, oh gosh, you guys have to watch Books of Blood. This movie is fantastic. Now, if you didn't know, it's based off of the Books of Blood books written by Clive Barker, and if you don't know who Clive Barker is, he is the writer and director of the movie Hellraiser. Well, I just love Clive Barker in general. I actually haven't gotten a chance to read the Books of Blood. They're actually pretty hard to come across, so I haven't gotten them. I think there's 6 in total, but I have read other pieces of his work, a novel and novella and things like that. He is just a fantastic writer. I love horror writers that are able to use beautiful language and then mix it in with blood and guts and gore, and Clive Barker is just smack dab in the middle of both of those things. I absolutely love him. I love his writing. Highly suggest you pick up a Clive Barker book if you get a chance, but Books of Blood is fantastic. It's kind of an anthology series where we have 3 separate stories, but they're kind of interlinked in some ways, and there's a lot of fluidity between them. I was blown away. This is a Hulu original, and I've watched a few Hulu originals in the past, and I can tell you that I did not enjoy them, and Hulu is bringing their game. This just knocked my expectations out of the water, truly. This movie I thought was so fun. It's creepy, it's weird, it's right up my alley. It's so Clive Barker, and I really enjoyed it. Number 2, I have to go Stir of Echoes, and I know what you're thinking. It's only because you're obsessed with Kevin Bacon, and yes, I do have a Kevin Bacon obsession, but this movie is just fantastic. It was one of my favorite horror movies growing up. It's about a man, Kevin Bacon, who gets hypnotized by a family member, and afterwards he's experiencing a lot of sensitivity. He's hearing and seeing things that he wouldn't normally hear, and he starts seeing the image of a woman who is a ghost, he's assuming, and he's trying to figure out what happened to this woman. It's a fantastic movie, and I actually just watched it recently because I did another video where I compared the novel to the book, because it's actually a book written by Richard Matheson. It held up, and it really is just like a fun ghost story. And for number 1, it has to be Hellraiser. If you guys are new here, then you probably don't know, my fiance proposed to me with a Hellraiser box. We're also using Hellraiser as our save the dates. So Hellraiser is really important to me. I got to meet Doug Bradley a few years ago, and it was like the best day of my life. Yeah, I love Hellraiser. It's one of my top horror films ever. It's just fantastic. So this, of course, was written and directed by Clive Barker, and it's actually based off of the novella The Hellbound Heart. Oh, this movie is just so great. It's about a man named Frank who is in search of otherworldly pleasures. He finds somebody to give him this box who exposes him to these Cenobites, which are like sadomasochistic demons from another realm, and he ends up dying, but he's brought back by spilled flesh of another. He uses his brother's wife to lure people in so that he can murder them and grow his body back. This sounds weird, but it's a fantastic movie. The practical effects, the dialogue, the shots. This movie is just, it's one of my top horror films ever. So now those were my top 5. Let's go to just my recommendations. These are movies that maybe aren't my favorite movies in the world. Maybe that they have some things that I would change, but I think they're worth watching in general. The first one is the Pet Sematary remake. Now, a lot of people didn't love this one because it is quite different than the Pet Sematary book and the novel. No, the book and the movie, Pet Sematary. However, I understood why they changed the things that they did, and I will be the first to admit, Pet Sematary is my all-time favorite Stephen King novel. I have read this so many times that it's falling apart. It's one of my favorite books ever, if I'm completely honest, and I didn't mind that they changed things. I completely understood why they were changed. The things that I was pretty heartbroken about is the relationship between Judd and Lewis in the book is just so beautiful. They have such an intense bond, and in the movie that was really just not there. So that was a little heartbreaking as a Pet Sematary fan to watch. However, the bigger changes that were in the movie, I didn't mind. I thought that it was fun, it was interesting. If you guys don't know what Pet Sematary is about, it's about a man who moves into a new house. He's told by his neighbor Judd that there is this Indian land that has gone sour, and if you bury things there, they come back to life. I'll leave it there in case you haven't. But if you haven't read the book, highly suggest. It's one of my favorite novels ever. It's so beautifully written, but it's so dark and creepy and twisted and heart-rendering. It's amazing. It's a fantastic novel. I didn't love the relationship between the two elder men. However, I thought the movie was actually pretty good. The ending, oh, the end scene is just fantastic. For number 7, okay, I didn't know whether to recommend the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre or another one. There are things that I do like about this. I think it's an original story, but there are some things that I just cannot get past. So I'm going to nix Texas Chainsaw, and I'm going to go instead for The Resident. So this movie is actually more of a thriller. It's definitely more of a laid-back film. It's not blood and guts and gore, but it's about a woman who moves into a new building, and the person who owns the building kind of stalks her. He breaks into her apartment at night. He's super creepy, and then things unravel from there. It's not the best movie in the world, nor is it an original. I know that there are other movies that have that kind of same premise. It's by no means this extravagant film that's just a must-see, but it's one of those laid-back films that I turn on when I want just like a toned-down thriller, and it's creepy and fun, so I'm going to recommend that instead of Texas Chainsaw. Let's move on to number 8. This one is the Child's Play remake. Now, if you were like me, when this movie came out, I was like, I'm not watching that. I have no interest in that. That just, no. I'm so sick of remakes. I'm over it. No thank you. And I ended up renting it because it was like $1 at my local video store, and I watched it and I loved it. I thought it was so fun. It's not at all like the original Child's Play. There's no man who's a serial killer who puts his soul into a doll. It's actually just a doll, and the safety features have been turned off on the doll, and he starts kind of learning through his interactions with people and film and media and things like that, and he learns how to kill by watching horror films. I mean, it's just so funny. It's a very original take on Child's Play, and really has nothing to do with the original. They could have called it something else and used something else completely, but I will say that I really like this movie because I took it more as kind of like a metaphor for the way that we rely too much on technology and how that can be dangerous. I just like overanalyzing films, I guess. But for me, this one had a meaning and I really enjoyed it. So this is one that I do recommend. I thought it was so fun. I laughed the whole way through. Plus it has some fun, you know, death scenes in it too. It's a good time. For number 9, I'm going to recommend Crawl. This is another one that I saw the preview for. I wasn't super interested in. It's about a hurricane in Florida. A woman goes in search for her father and finds that he is trapped in the basement by alligators. And this movie is creepy, it's fun, and the best part of it is, I'm gonna give you a tiny spoiler, but I promise it's a good one, the dog survives. You guys have no idea well, you probably do know how happy I was when I saw that the dog survived. If you don't know, I have 2 dogs and a cat, and every time I see a dog die in a movie, I have to like pause it and compose myself and give my dog hugs and kisses and treats. Like, it's a whole ordeal. So I was really pleasantly surprised that the dog lived, and he's just such a goodest boy, and I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was fun, and it wasn't too bleh. That's what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be bleh, for lack of better words. And it was fun. It kind of did remind me of like a Lake Placid kind of feel to it. Just a good time. Next up, number 10, halfway through, I'm going to recommend The Cabin in the Woods. Now, this movie is silly. It's fun. It's about a group of friends that goes into a cabin in the woods. But it very much so pokes fun at itself. It kind of, you know, incorporates all of these classic horror tropes, and it's fun, it's silly, but there's a ton of blood and guts in it too. It's one that I revisit pretty often. Okay, so for number 11, I have Hostel. This has never been one of my favorite movies, to be completely honest, but it is bloody, it's creepy. Just the idea of, I guess, going abroad, going to another country where you don't know the language, you don't know the culture, and you're kind of stranded there, that's just a terrifying idea in itself if you transport yourself into the position of the characters. So I really enjoy that. I think that there's a lot of obviously really bloody scenes, and it's just one that you want to turn on to just be immersed in blood and guts. For number 12, I'm going to recommend House of a Thousand Corpses. Now, this is by no means my favorite Rob Zombie film. I much prefer The Devil's Rejects. However, I mean, this one is the reason The Devil's Rejects exists, so you have to, I guess, you gotta pay a little respect for the original. So House of a Thousand Corpses is, I mean, it's a movie about a killer family. That's pretty much all it is. But they have some scenes that are really fantastic, and also some scenes that are pretty weird. I mean, it's a weird movie in general. My friend had told me, he's like, I see it more as like a music video than a horror film. And when he said that, I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, it is more like a music video. And I mean, I guess that makes sense with Rob Zombie's past, so in that aspect, I could see it in a better light for sure, but I still like Devil's Rejects. I think that one's written more like a clear, linear story. You feel more grounded in it, you know where you are, you know the characters, and I don't know, I really love that one. However, I think that there are a lot of things that are good about House of a Thousand Corpses. I just think it's a little bit on the nose, if that makes sense. I don't know if anybody else agrees with me, but there are a few things that you're just like, it's still a little on the nose. But all in all, it's where the Firefly family started, so we have to, you know, love it a little bit. Next up, I'm going to recommend the movie Dismissed. Now, this is, again, one of those, like, kind of chill thrillers, but these were all in the horror section, that's why I'm recommending them. It's a movie about a teacher who kind of gets to know one of his students, and kind of the story unravels about how dark and twisted the student is. It really surprised me on how much I enjoyed it. It's very, very mild, no like extreme blood and guts or anything like that, but it's just one that you throw on a Sunday afternoon and you're like, oh, okay, I enjoyed that. Same with number 14. This movie is Mom and Dad. Now, this movie is just so fun. It's about a frequency that makes parents want to kill their kids, and I know that sounds absolutely ridiculous, but the movie is so fun. It's definitely a lot comedy. It's a big portion comedy, but there are definitely scenes of blood and guts in there. It's so fun. I'm really enjoying these like random Nicolas Cage movies where he just loses his mind. I did a video on The Color Out of Space a few days ago, weeks ago, I don't even know where we are anymore, but a while ago, and in that movie he just loses it too, and it's just, I don't know, I'm really enjoying it. So Mom and Dad, definitely recommend. It's one of those movies that I really wasn't expecting much from, and I watched it and I was like, that was fun. Number 15 is Oculus, and by the way, these recommendations aren't in any particular order. I don't know if I mentioned that or not, but number 15 is Oculus. Now, this was written and directed by Mike Flanagan, and if you don't know who Mike Flanagan is, he is actually the writer and director of Dr. Sleep, and I just think that he has a way of making movies his own. I can see the passion for horror in his movies to make something original and not just make a remake 1,000 times over, so I really do respect him as just a prominent figure in horror. Oculus is a story about a brother and sister who have been tormented by a mirror all their lives, and I know that sounds kind of weird too, but I promise you there are some really like jarring scenes in the film, but there's definitely one scene that stands out for me, and it's when the children are smaller and they interact with their sick mother. That scene just messes me up. I think it's so twisted. So this movie, all in all, I think it's original, it's odd, it's weird, it's definitely more of a mindfuck, and it's just fun. It's just fun. So I do recommend that. So now we are moving on and we're going classics. So let's talk about the best classics on Hulu. First, we have Children of the Corn. This is an 84 movie. It's about a town where the children murder all of the adults, and then they worship this external force, and when they're 18 they have to sacrifice themselves to that being. A couple drives in and they get kind of mixed up with the town children and things happen. This is not my favorite movie by any means. The ending gets super weird, but the first like half of the film I really do enjoy. But it's, I mean, obviously it's a classic. It's one you've got to watch for sure, but not my favorite movie based on the Stephen King novel. Number 17, we have Hellraiser II. This is an 88 film, and here we pick up where Hellraiser 1 has left off. Kirsty is now in a mental hospital, and she's kind of, you know, going through the same thing where she interacts with the Cenobites, and this one's not my favorite, but it is still a classic film, and number 2 in the Hellraiser series. And then for number 19, we have, nope, I missed 18. For 18, we have Evil Dead 2. This is an 87 film. So this is kind of like the same thing. Ash goes to a cabin and he reads the Necronomicon because he just, he can't help himself. And then people start getting possessed and killing each other. Yeah, the same as always, cabin, people getting possessed. Well, I guess except Army of Darkness, but any other Evil Dead movie. But number 19, we have The Last House on the Left. This is a 72 film. It was written and directed by Wes Craven, and it's about two young girls who are going to, I believe it's a concert, and they get kidnapped and traumatized by a group of convicts. It's a pretty dark, twisted film. They actually did a remake of this, I think in 2009-ish, but that was obviously a remake. This is the original, and definitely an older horror film, and just kind of like a classic that I definitely recommend everybody watch. And for number 20, this might be one of my favorite horror films. This is actually called The Skull, and it's a 1965 film. Now, this is definitely an older horror film, and if you're not into older horror, if you're not into older horror films, I suggest skipping over this one because there are parts of it that can be deemed slow in comparison to modern day horror. However, I think the idea of this is just so fantastic. I think it's so fun. I think there are so many scenes that are original and fun. There's a scene where a skull's floating through the air and you can actually see the strings attached to it. It's just fantastic. So this was actually a story written by Robert Bloch. If you don't know who, well, the movie was based on a story written by Robert Bloch. If you don't know who Robert Bloch is, he is the man who wrote Psycho. And I actually have another video comparing Psycho, the film, to the movie. No, the book to the film, if you want to check that out. But as far as the movie goes, it's a story about a man who was pretty mad. He wrote a book about just tormenting and murdering humans, wrapped it in human flesh. After he died, grave diggers came and robbed his grave and stole his skull. Well, it turns out that the man was actually possessed by a demon, and the skull is still possessed by that same demon. So you get to go around and see this demon kind of affect the way that people live their lives and commit murder and crimes and things like that. It's really unique because it's like a possession story without the possession. It's really, really cool. I really like this movie. There are some scenes that are shot through the skull, and so the skull actually becomes kind of like a character in the film. I just think it's so original, it's so fun, and for a 65 film, I was pretty impressed by it. Wow, we did it! Those were my top 20 recommendations for horror films on Hulu. Hulu has stepped up their game recently. I've stepped it up for Huluween. And lastly, let me know what your favorite horror movies are on Hulu. Feel free to like this video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to subscribe if you're into watching more horror videos. I do a lot of book and movie comparisons. I talk a lot about books and horror films in general and all sorts of stuff. So stick around if you are interested. I'm also finishing out the 31 Days of Halloween, so we've got a few days left for that. If you need even more horror, please feel free to listen to any of my stories linked down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow with yet another horror video. Bye guys!